right? So we'll see how it goes. But
Periods?
yeah, they'll have one on week 13.
Okay.
All right, we're back. We are back. And we are COMP229, fall 2016 semester here at Centennial. And it's week 11, part 2 of our broadcast. And what we're doing here is we're talking today about security. We just finished talking about the final project in detail. And I also checked the people that were here in class to see what their projects look like. Some common issues were, remember that I have to be able to see your the text you're displaying. Also, it's a restaurant. Make sure that you use put the phone number of your restaurant, and how do I contact you, and how do I go there to eat, right? Like, these are basics. Some people, I know it's almost like I need the phone number and the contact location, or the location of the restaurant almost on every page, right? Okay. So a little bit. I'm going to use a project. We're going to continue the project from last time. So I'm going to kind of bring up, I hate when it does this. Our previous project, create a template. Now, you've seen this a bunch of times on the exam, final exam, even though it might be worth you to do a template. Chances are, right? So let's try this together. I also have a request to put how do I do the whole Azure thing? With the Azure thing, when I do it physically from here, from this location, is I cannot connect to the database because of the firewall, right? Computer. So I'd have to kind of do a separate recording just to connect to the database. I've done those recordings before, but I'll see if I can do one from that machine. It's kind of hard because it won't allow me to do it on this machine. Okay. I'm starting this one, so I'm bringing this one up, and I want to modify this one, right? And I'm going to make lesson 11, right? And I'm doing, the reason why everything kind of flows from one to the next. We don't have to start off a new site for an example, right? So let's go to COMP229, lesson 10, solution. So in my Solution Explorer, it's still doing its loading. I'll wait for it to be done, right? It's doing its thing. Lesson 10 comes up, I'm going to make a template to make lesson 11. Now, if I give myself some time here on my virtual machine, then we should. So here's everything loaded. What I want to do here is I want to build my project just one more time, right? To make sure the file export template. We've done this before lots of times now, and we want to just follow through this thing here. Just change that lesson 10, or you can call it whatever you like. I'm just going to just click, leave it at lesson 10 and click finish. That's a template, right? So it's going to create a lesson 10 template, not a project. I'm going to make a lesson 11 project in a second. And remember, you have to wait for the file to come back. And usually on PCs, it'll come back with the name of, or the zip file of your template. Don't worry about stuff, and go File, Close Solution, File, New Project. And what I want to do here with the new project is into C# and scroll down until I get to COMP229, right? Lesson. And then change this one to, instead of lesson 101, change to lesson 11. Got to go into the right folder, which is COMP229, and create a new Git repository and click OK. There we go. All right, so now it's going to create a new project based on my plan. Remember, what we're going to do here is add security. So it actually has security built in. We got a problem, right? Let's talk about what the problem is. Got a couple problems, actually. So first, I want to build this thing, build a solution, make sure it runs. It's also going to download and install all the stuff from NuGet Package Manager. When it's done building, so it's done building, right? I should be able to run it in Chrome or with your favorite browser, right? It should work from the get-go. And everything we did last week should be here. So let's take a look. Now we got some issues. We got some stuff we didn't cover from the first part of the course. That there's things we need to modify in our nav bar in order for us to make it go. You don't have the latest version of Office. I don't care. There we go. So it takes a little bit of time to set everything up. And right now what's happening is it's setting up Internet Information Services, which is right here. Button here. So it sets that up, number one. The second thing it sets up is the connection to the database. That's what this is. That's why it's taken so long to do this. So it's actually connection to the database. And now it's showing my NBC Music Store. Now I'm also running it in a VM, virtual machine, so it's a little slower than normal. Okay, good. Now, to rock, and then it shows all the rock albums. We click on these, shows a little detail about this stuff with an album placeholder. Yay, fantastic. Oh, this is interesting. If you ever get this issue, right, why has it got a problem? Because it's trying to go, what was that? /home, right? C /home, right? And why would this be a problem? If I go back for this, it's going to go to localhost /home, right? That's a problem. So how do you fix this link? Right, let's fix that link. So if I go to now I'm going to correct this under views, under shared, and then layout the. Notice that it says for the path, right? So it says home. That's the path of my button, right? So why would this be a pathing error, right? Oh. That's happening, right? One problem is that I'm going home index for my, and this is my index of my home controller. Can I get to my home controller from inside of the other controller? So it's almost like when I go to my home controller, right, in my index page, I want to go to the page because I'm down one, right? So it's kind of weird. That's something we have to address today. We'll kind of take care of that. I'm still going to my home controller. Like, no, if I look at the action link, it tells me, it says the action name, the controller name, which is the home controller. Okay. Let's take a look at this too. Home controller at this point. So if I look at home controller, do I see a home controller here? No. Therefore, it doesn't know where to go. What's the default controller? I talked about this last time, right? I changed the default controller so it's something else. Where did I make? So if I go to startup.cs, right? It tells me this, so it's not here. Where else? Okay, in the app start folder, where am I looking? Startup, root config, root config, root config. So if I look at root config, look what it says. It says is the store controller, right? So it's not looking at home because I don't have a home controller, and this is a leftover from when we did our. This should change from home to store because it's the store controller's home. That's what I want, not the store controller's index page, because my store is what I'm showing. Let's run this change to make it work. So I'm running this thing again for the first time, and now I've modified that one bit. And when I click home, it's going to take me right back here. Right? And if I click on this one, and if I click on home, it's going to take me back. Right, so now it's going. So that was the problem. We're good. Let's put this up on GitHub. I'm going to stop debugging for a second. I'm going to go into Team Explorer. I'm going to go into changes. I have a change updated layout.cshtml. And correct home link. Here we go. Commit all. Go. And now I'm going to go to home. I'm going to go to sync. Of course, there is no GitHub repo for this. Let's make one. So I'm going to publish to GitHub. Click this one. It's going to ask me where I want it. Don't want it here. I do want COMP229 F2016 lesson 11 and click publish. And if everything went well, it's going to take two of my commandments, because I just did another one, right? And Microsoft did a couple of its own. And if I go back to GitHub for a second, so if I look at GitHub, So GitHub, and I go to Centennial, and I look through this, you can see that I got a lesson 11. And if I look at lesson 11, there's 3 commits, right? 2 that were created from Microsoft, and this one I just made myself. So 3 commits. All right, so that's your project. So please, if you're with me, go to this link, and this is where we're going to start today. Okay, we're not touching the one from previous days. You have that as a. So what are we talking about here when it comes to security, which is what the topic of the day is, right? Security. We talked about security in the first half of the course, right? First half of the course, we talked about identity as well, but it was done in a slightly different way. So I'm not going to re-talk or rediscuss, skip some of these things that they're talking about here, which is really about, we've been creating pages in our web application that are accessible to all visitors of my site for ASP.NET MVC, and now we want to add security. And how do we do that? We need to look at a mechanism that allows the user to log in and so on. Talk about, skip through these really quickly, is with an identity is, hey, who are you? That's the first thing about. This is where authentication enters the game, right? So there's a difference between authentication and authorization. Authentication means that, hey, I know who you are. I know you're. Authorization means, what can I access, right? What can I do? I can go to school, and I can open the doors to my classroom, but there's certain doors in the school I can't open. Like, for example, classrooms that I never go to on different floors because I have no business being there. An example of that would be in the new classrooms that are in the new residence. I can't go into those rooms, right? If those rooms are locked up, I've got no access, right? And there's certain places here on the floor that I can't access. Like, for example, some of the server rooms, because I'm not authorized. I'm authenticated. The system will know who I am, but they'll also know that I shouldn't be there, right? Here on the floor, I don't have access to the business meeting rooms. Why would I need them? I'm a professor. I'm not an administrator, right? Off is this. How do I prove who I am with authentication? Well, usually it's username and password. This is just that kind of a review, right? But in this case, with MVC, we're using email and password. And that's why I told you web forms and MVC, using identity are total. There's different structures, right? Than we use for web forms. Web forms we use using password. MVC, we can mess things up. That's why I told you create a different database. Okay, so again, what are you allowed to do is authorization. Authenticate you. I know who you are. What are you allowed to do? It really depends on what you're allowed to do with from a roles perspective. Okay, so again, the idea of roles is what we can cover later on. So what's my role? Am I an admin? Am I a contributor? What is my role? And depending on what my role is, I have different authorization. I'm authenticated. I can get into the site, but my authorization level may not allow me to delete data, as an example. That might only be for someone who's an administrator. Or maybe it might not allow me to do things like, if I'm a regular user, my authorization allows me to check out. I can order stuff online and check out, but I can't modify my menu, right? That would be an admin person or some other kind of contributor, right? So depending on what my role is, gives me a different authorization. We talked about how to log in. Now this is a great thing. We do a lot of this stuff in the app start folder, and I want to point this out to you really quickly. So if I go to my app start folder, let's take a look at this for a second. So if I look at my app start folder in my Solution Explorer, inside my startup.auth, all my authorization pretty much is configured. And I'm going to talk about this in a second. One is, notice that remember we talked about OWIN first part of the semester, right? We did we did identity by hand with web forms. Here we scaffolded everything out, right? Notice this. Here's on line 25 of the startup auth login, right? Login. It tells us the login path, right? Now this could change. Let's say, for example, you don't want it to go to account login. Notice when I say account login, it's the view that it goes. If you look at views, account, and then I go look all the way down here, login, that's the view that's responsible for logging in right here, okay? If I scroll down here, if I keep scrolling down, these are the important things. And if I keep looking down here, notice there's some stubs already built in place for things like, hey, use Microsoft account authentication to log me in. If I got an Outlook account, I can log in. If I got a Twitter account, I can log in. If I got a Facebook account, this is all commented out, but it's not that difficult to put back in. I can also use something called two-factor authentication. Is two-step authentication. You have a little bit of, yeah, you have a little app on your phone as an example. Again, authentication in the first half. Two-step authentication is really important for things like banking, all right? Or if you're doing something that requires, you know, if you're accessing your webmail, like your Hotmail, if you're a Hotmail person or a Gmail person, I would definitely, and if that's your main account, authorize authentication a little bit. But the great thing about that is we know it's you. It's not your girlfriend who stole your password, right? It's not anybody else. It's just do the same thing with, right? So a lot of these new services have two-step authentication. So no one, even if they know your password, they need to know the authenticator code. It's an extra step for them to get in. Is it impossible for them to steal to get the code? No. If they steal your phone and they have access to your phone and your authenticator's on your phone, and if they know your password, they're in. But it's another thing you have to think about for thieves to get in and to steal your identity. So get-go, this scaffold in startup.auth, it actually does things like, hey, where can I authenticate? This is really, that's one thing. It includes inside that startup folder. The other thing is the identity config. Let's take a look at that one. I told you, but here's something that you can look at. In identity config, if you scroll down, here, hey, look, I don't want to use 6 digits out here. Hey, look, do I require a digit? Yes, I can make this false. So if you really want to try this out, and it's only 4 digits, right? So let me try this out here. And I want to require non-letter digit to false. Let's really like dumb this authentication down here. Let's try this out. And my required digit, or odd digit, any digit, right? And require lowercase, false. And require uppercase, false. Look what I've done to my security. I've really dumbed it down here, right? Here's something that is there, but is not activated by default. It's called user lockout. Okay. Now, I don't want to I don't want to lock out my users. I can make this false too. Users will never be logged out. They can try and connect a million times and they won't be locked out, right? So these are the things that I think are, you know, are things we can very easily, difficult to do, right? And you can see that I can change all these back. Let's try this and see what I'm talking about here. So if I'm going to kind of run my application here, I've modified these things inside my identity config. This is how easy it is to change the way you log in and all that kind of stuff. Requires for you, this is global for all users, right? So if all you need is like a minimum 4 letter password, let's try this out. Notice that I don't have a register and login. What I want to do here in my register and login pages is I want to expose them. They're not there right now. So how do I log in or register my users? I want to give a link to log in, right? Link. My CSHTML. And can I do something like this? Can I just copy this link? Here's my link. This thing, right? Can I put that in? Oops, undo. Copy this and put it in here like, right? And so now this wouldn't be, this is my, again, look at the action link. Action link says, this is my link text. So this is login. This is my index. Is it the login for my index? Think about this. No, it's the login page. I store my controller, what's my controller for my login? Well, if I look at my Solution Explorer, and if I look at my controllers, it's the account controller, right? Use account. So it's got to be the account controller for logging in, account, right? If I'm right, if I wanted to log in. Let's just do this on my page, and I go back to this page and refresh. I should see another link that says log in, right? My login page, it should be able to take me to my login page now, right? Here it is. I can also register as a new user. Right at the top. Here's something else. So I really want this information here. This stuff. Answer is no. Get rid of it. If you're doing MVC stuff for your project, or even if you want to add this in for your restaurant to get extra points and make sure that it does something, get rid of this, because you're not going to use another service course, right? So how do I get rid of this? Well, I got to change my view, right? So I go to my view. Facebook, Twitter, GitHub, right? You know, whatever you want to use this. And OAuth is what it's called. OAuth. Okay, but we don't want to do that right now. What I want to do is I want to go into the CSS. Hey, use this other service. Where does it say that? Here's my view bag title. It's got an anti-forgery token, which is kind of cool. They put this in so that way I'm to log in, right? Now here's my H4, right, with a horizontal rule stands for. And then I have my email, and these are my two boxes, and my validate message for, and then the pass. So those are good, but I don't want to use local to log in. I just want to get rid of this. So this can go, right? So I'm not going to use, maybe I'm customizing my login page so I don't need it. Okay, next. Scroll down. It says my checkbox for remember me, my label for remember me, and then as I scroll down, it says register as a new user. That's good. And enable to password reset functionality. Okay, let's think about this, right? Can I reset my password? Forgot my password. Talked about this, right? Can I? Well, let's see. And here's the section. So a social login form. Okay, this is new. That says, hey, here's a partial, right? Thing. This actually generates a partial fragment that's on the page. Look at this, right here. Here's your partial, and it does something like this: HTML partial, the name of the partial. Look at my Solution Explorer, and if I look underneath my my shared, I have a login partial right here. That's one. I didn't use that yet. Okay, I have a login partial, and somewhere this external logins list partial. Where does this exist? Here, under my account. Right, so this is where it is. So external login list partial is right here. Partial page is injected into this section. So notice I say a new external login list view model. Create something called a view model to generate a partial page, right? Which I talked about, but I don't expect you to do, right? Because it's just additional complexity that you don't need to think about right now. I didn't cover it in terms of what I want you to do, and I want to ask you to do it, and I haven't asked you to do it on your assignment, right? So I don't need this whole section is what I'm saying, and I can probably get rid of it. So let's get rid of this whole section. Bam. What you need to do at minimum, because I don't want to see that additional page. And if I kill that partial page, notice it's here, the partial says I'm going to kill this. I don't care about that. So if I refresh the page now, right, it should take those things away, right? I don't have that anymore. So log in, tells me my login. I can remember my password and log in. Okay. Now if I haven't registered and I have a particular scenario, right? If I haven't, I can certainly try and register a new user. So let's try this out. Or I can log in as an old one. I use admin at example.com last time, right? And let's see if I can use the same email to log in. Remember, I kind of already created this user, right? I'll try and type in my complex password, right? Try that again. Hold on a second. And let's see, and click login. See if it works. It's kind of trying. It says invalid login attempt because I created it. It was for the other database, not for this one. This one. So here's register as a new user, and here's my registration. I'll use my admin at example.com, and then here's my password. Now it could be 4 characters. Let's use 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, I dumbed it down, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Click register. It's a problem. The password must be at least 6 characters. Well, hold on. I said it could be 4 characters. How come it's asking me for 6? Where is this coming from? Huh? Doesn't matter. Why is this giving me this issue? Because it's being protected in 2 places. One place, the auth, and the other place is if I look at my models, right, check the account model, the identity model, right? Because my identity model also can have additional information that's built into it, right? So far my identity model, what it tells me is what's the default connection to connect to the database. My default connection, that's what I use to connect to my database, local database, to use my identity, right? Now what I want to do is I want to use not my little file that's inside my program, because by default, ladies and gentlemen, it comes under this app data. When I create another database here, why would I want that? I wouldn't want that. I want to connect to the same database. And where do I get this connection? Well, web config, right? Web config tells me what my connection data is and tells me right here. It says, hey, here's my MVC Music Store connection. My default connections pointing to this local database directory as ASP.NET, da 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 da. I don't want that. I want this. So I might as well change the default to grab all this connection. But I don't want to do this by hand because remember, I have it inside the sum. So this is space, right? I'm going to go to stop debugging for a second because I've been kind of debugging by hand. I'm going to go to SQL Server. And under SQL Server Object Explorer on the left-hand side, I'm going to see my local DB, this one, right? And what I want to see is the database that I want to connect to, which is COMP229. This is where it's going right now. You know, notice that it says here for MVC Music Store connection, it's the local DB. The catalog is, sorry, the catalog is wrong. The catalog is actually the MVC Music Store. That's the database. That's what catalog means. MVC Music Store. Integrated security is true. Health sets is true. App is equal to entity framework. Okay, entity framework. Okay, notice that here, as I scroll to the right, it says integrated security is true. Provider name is system.data.SQL client, same as this one, is not entity framework. Okay, so that's the difference. My connection string will be slightly different for my authorization. So how do I get my connection string? So go back to SQL Server Object Explorer, pin this for a second, and scroll down to Music Store, and then properties. What this is going to do, by the way, it's the exact same way you connect to Azure, right? And under my properties, if I scroll down, I want my connection string, which is right here, right? So what I want to do is I want to connection string till I highlight the whole thing, copy it, and then go back to this connection string over here where it says connection string. So I'm going to show you this, and then just paste over. So just kind of paste in there until you get to, until you get to right about here. Press Control V. All right, so this is what it's done. It's kind of, if you look through it, it says integrated security, la la la, and if my initial catalog is the same catalog, MVC Music Store. This is important. So now I'm pointing both my account and NBC Music Store stuff to this catalog, to this database, which means, and if I look at my SQL, if I scroll into my NBC Music Store, and if I open it up right now before I log in, my tables do not include secure login for the first time. If we register for the first time, they will include it. All right, so now remember, 6 characters weren't enough somehow. Or 4 characters. Let's see where that could be, like I said. So that's one part I wanted to get. The other part is the models. So here's account controller. The account controller comes from somewhere, right? It comes from a model, right? So if I look at my model, here's my account view. There's my identity model, which is the main model. My manage view model. Chances are it's this one. Right? My display name is equal to email. This is required, right? And if I look down here, it says send code view model. Okay, cool. Required. And it tells me, remember this browser? Yes, if I want to. And here's my forget view model and login view model, email, right? Where my data type is equal to password. Remember me, I can choose to do that, right? And then it says string length, password must be at least 2 characters long. Minimum length is 6. See? So 2 would be the interpolation. I'm taking this minimum length here, and I'm making it the minimum 6. So I also have to change it here. Even though I changed it in my auth, my model, remember my model can provide value for my view, right? That's how it works. So even though I've changed it in one place, I still got to change it over here, or else my model will say no. It's almost like client-side checking that it'll do, even though it's on the server side. So let's change this back down to 4. Startup.auth, or sorry, in my identity config, as well as my account view model. Those 2 places. Now let's see if it works. So I want to log in and register with 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So run this now. I know a little bit of work, but I try to explain myself, right? And let's try this out again. And it's going to be admin. And now let's see if it actually creates the tables in the right database, not locally, right? So I changed that in the web config, right? And this is what you do, like I said. So log in, register a new user. I'll say admin. And then here's my password, 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice it doesn't show up red anymore. 1, 2, 3, 4, because the client-side validation is now it doesn't do it here on the view. Register. If everything goes well, a few seconds, and we're good to go. Okay, here's a problem. It's trying to go to home. Remember again, back to what we did with login, right? So let's go back to see if we can fix that. We'll go back. Let's go back to my login page. My login and my register page do different things, and I got to correct it because I've removed my home page. It doesn't exist anymore, right? So I go to login SCSHTML. Okay, so and when I'm done logging in, what happens? I need to redirect somehow to my home page, right? But the problem is here, right? Me to redirect. What am I doing here? When I submit my login page or my register page, what's the construct? First of all, when I display my page, my login or register page, what kind of request am I getting to the server? What am I doing to the server? Request, a GET request or a POST request? A GET request. So whenever I try and get a page to view the page, right? But for processing the page, it's a POST request, right? And that happens where? At the controller. I got to look at my Solution Explorer. And if I look at my controller, so now what controller would it be? It'd be under my controllers folder, right? It'd be controller, right? Because my account controller takes care of logging in. So double click. And if I scroll down, so here's my sign-in manager, right? Here's my login. There's the GET request, right? So I log in. It shows me my login page. And here's the post. So when this actually, what this does is it right here, it allows me to the login request, right? And if I scroll down very carefully, it's got to tell me what to do with it, right? So model, lockout, la la la, right? So here it says, okay, sign in status success, redirect to what? Right? Return URL. So that's what's happening there. So where am I getting this return URL? It's coming into this string inside the login. It's coming in login, and that's why login requires you to use a partial page. I'll talk about this in a second. How about my register page? So here's my code. I can do this too. But somewhere down here is the register. So here I'm registering. I show the register page, and down here, when I finish registering, give me index home. That doesn't exist anymore. I got to change this to index store. So I'm going to stop debugging. So store, right? Stop debugging, save. I'm showing you this because I'll tell you how to features if you don't have a home controller. By the way, for your restaurant and for your project, I recommend to save all this trouble, have a home. There's nothing wrong. Then you have nothing to modify here. I don't have a home controller in my pages because I've taken it away. I've called it store controller. Right? Okay, let's run this thing now and see what happens. Okay, so I'm running it, and it should take me to my main page again. And now I'm going to register another user, right? And first of all, let's see if I can log in and log out. What happens? So here's my login page. I've logged in, and I'm going to log in as myself, so I'm in at example.com. And my password is 1234. That's, yay! What happened? Trying to go to home page again, right? That's one thing. Next, let's try and register someone new. Register. I probably fixed one place, but not the other place. Just putting it out there for you, right? All right, so let's go into register example.com. It's another common one I use. Okay, 1234, 1234, and then register. Success. This one works. My login page take me, and look, I have a login up here, but I'm already logged in, right? How do I log out? And how do I detect if I'm logged in? Work, right? Well, this is why it uses a partial built in. Show you what I'm talking about. Lots of work, right? But this is why I'm telling you, there's things you can take care of and things you can't. Now, one thing we did differently was in our login, then our register, right? Just to show you the ins and outs of this thing, right? Here's our login URL, right? And the reason we're getting this, by the way, notice that this is an asynchronous action. So it's using an asynchronous, okay? Okay, I don't know what's calling my login page from this return. It's trying to log me in. It's going to take me back there, right? All right, so wherever it's calling again there, but I'm also going to have a default place that I'm going to kind of go back to, right? That's the one thing I need to know. Where is that? And to hunt this out, I'm going to go back to my Solution Explorer for a second and show you that there is a partial page that they include. It's actually included. Now, in order for you to create a partial page, like I said, you need a custom view controller. It's a different kind of thing altogether, right? Is what it's called, right? Now, notice what it says here. It says, I'm using Microsoft Identity. The request is authenticated, right? Then I want to say log off an account. So basically, what I'm going to use this stuff, right? My login form, right? If my request is not authenticated, or if I'm authenticated again, here, this razor syntax right here. If I'm authenticated, it's going to show log off or in the account, whatever the account information is, right? If I'm authenticated. And notice what it also says. It says my identity user. Here's my action link. Here, hello. So this is the text. I'm using my manage root. I got to look at the manage root for a second to manage my index to get the identity of the user on the form. Okay. How about if I'm not authenticated? If I'm not authenticated, display my register and login, right, on the nav bar. Right, that's what this is doing. So this is one way of doing to check to see if I'm authenticated and to display different versus a login partial. Okay, we've seen a partial page before, haven't we? We just saw one, an example render this partial page, and actually it's done for us by default in our default application. Remember how we did this last time? Yes. And once you have this page in here, right, it stops you from changing the token to say that you're logged in already. Like what you can do is, remember, you're using cookie-based authentication. So it's storing your session in a cookie on the page. If I put in that I'm already authenticated and I send the cookie to my site, I can break the security and say, oh yeah, he's logged in, even though I'm not. So Microsoft has this built-in method called anti-forgery token to stop you from doing that. It checks to see that your cookie's matching. Security is good on Microsoft. All right, so this is one place. So it says manage index from my index, my manage page on my index, right? So it's getting the information from my manage. If you look at manage index, here it is. Okay, on success, when I'm going to go here, where am I going to go, right? So it's going to show me success in here in my manage page. It's also going to show me things like if I'm using two-factor authentication, I can enable this piece. Using phone number verification, I can use this. There's all kinds of stuff built in, and so on. If I have my password, I can reset my password. And here are any external logins. Right. So that's what this page does for me as well. So what I want to do is, like I said, I want to go into my login partial, this one, my login partial, and I want to use that link. So I want to use that in my layout CSHTML instead of this. I want to use a login partial. Now we saw partial before. We were page that used a partial, right? We actually took it out. Remember, in our login page, we had a partial, right? An action link, but up here, instead of an action link, we use something else. And if I try to do it, if I want a list item, if I said at, and if I go HTML dot, if I look at this, there's a lot in form, right? Display name, display for. Display for is a label. Display for model. Display text, and options here, right? Which is, you know, what I want, what I can look for, right? There's render action, and this one under partial. If I click on render partial, and if I hover over it, it tells me what I need. It says I need the partial view name plus 3 other partial, and I open it up, and I can say, what's the string for the partial view name? I know what the partial view name is, right? It is login partial.cshtml. Probably I only have to put in this, right? Login partial. That's the first piece, my login partial. What other overloads are there? And that says, there's a couple of other things I need here for me to convert this, right? So login partial, comma, and then it says my object model, right? My model for my login partial. Account model, right? So is it account? Remember, because I got to look at the right model, and it tells me what it is. It's an actual model that I got to put in here. So what if I can't figure this out? What would I do? Here's a quick fix for this. I did this because we customized our MVC music store. We have an example of this. If I close my solution for a second, and if I choose how it's so difficult for us to customize identity because of all this stuff, let's try something. I'm going to make a new project right here. I'm going to call it, instead of whatever, I'm going to go to web. I'm going to go to this one, and I'm going to create this web application. We'll make it web application 11 because today's the 11th. And what I want to do is I want to just create this without anything else. I don't care about GitHub for now. And I'm going to put it in COMP229, but it's just going to be, okay, and I'm going to choose MVC. And I'm definitely going to choose individual user access, right? Individual user access. Okay, everything else leave the same. It's going to, what's that? What it's going to do is it's going to re-scaffold out. And it'll give us the code we need, if you can't remember how it is, right? So I know it's render. I want to render the partial, right? That's what I want to do. But I want to look at that original, took it away because I didn't need it, right, for my first examples. But now I need to go back, and that's the first step. Now we have to also make sure that it reroutes properly. If I look at my views, if I look at my shared, and if I look at my layout, the CSHTML, you can see that that's all I need. HTML.partial, login partial, and that's it. All right, so that's all I need. So actually I was close, but not partial. So very close to what I want to do, and that takes care of everything for me, right? Let's go back to our so I'm going to close my project. I'm going to open my solution again, right? So I'm going to go back to my project solution, and I'm going to look at inside the right folder, which is COMP229, and I'm going to look at lesson 11, and I want to open that up again, and all it takes me back. Instead of render partial, all I want to do is just partial, or maybe something simple like that, and I can get rid of all this, and I can get rid of this. And maybe I should probably format this properly with an extra quotation mark. How about that? All right. So I kind of did this, right? And this is going to supply it in the right corner and all that stuff. Now it's slightly modified. It looks a little different than this. But if I was to run this thing now, it's still going to show me log in. But this time it might show me log in and register. Because it's displaying a partial piece. Notice that it detects me. Hey, I'm logged in. It's built in. So if I log off, it's going to redirect me. It's going to redirect me back to home. Stuff happens in the account controller. So we got to fix this piece. So again, going back to this. And if I go to log off, right? My log off is either a sign in or sign out action. So this is my post. I'm going to fix the wrong thing. So what's sending it to this? Something that's sending it to this to fix it, right? And that's what tells me where I'm coming from. Is equal to return URL. It says, here's my send code, return to action. That's what this is doing. But it's not telling me where to go yet. Because keep going. Here's my post, my account verify code. I don't care about that. Here's my register. We fixed that piece. So register works. For me, type password. We don't have this yet. And remember, the forgot password confirmation is something where we don't want to just change reset password authorization with a callback. So it's kind of complex. We'll figure out how to do this later on. Okay, keep going. Doing my reset password. Here it is, reset password confirmation. My send code. I want to send my verification, right? And now I'm at external login callback for external logins. And you see that they're very organized. Oh, here we go, index home. That's not right. It's index store. So let's stop doing this. Index store. Let's save. So where, oh where, my friends? Where, oh where? Here's my helpers. In software it says redirect to local right here, index home. This is not it. So we're going to change this from index home to index store, because redirect to local is a method that's buried in here stuff. Great, so we've done it. Whew, all that little work. Let's see if we can make this go. So we've changed because that's what one change to authentication does this, right? So this is the first piece of authentication. Authentication, can I display the right links on my nav bar? And you can see that it's not that difficult from a scaffold perspective. It's built in to MVC. You just have to activate it. So here I want to, takes me to my login page. I log in as tom@example.com. I put in my little stupid password, 1234, and then click log in. Takes me back to my page. Now it takes me back to this page, right, my home page. And if I want to register a new user, let's say I'll register Jane at, sample.com, 1234, 1234, register. And bam, it takes me back to my home page. I can log off. All this stuff works nice. Yay, beautiful. Where does this stuff get stored now? This is important. I'm going to go back to my SQL Server Object Explorer and look at those extra tables, people, right? So it actually created all those tables, right? So once I redirected the connection string from going to my local database, which is an actual database that's inside of my app, it directs it right to the database I want. So for you guys, when you have a single database, like on Azure, you want to your default, that's all you're going to do. And of course, it's going to have to include the username and password for the Azure database, right? But that's it. It's all one place now. So my genre, my order detail, but I also have all the stuff that I need for logging in and registering in one place. Cautious about this. Once I create these tables here, if I go and try and do web forms, fail. Right? Also, once I've got this database in place, if I point to this in another project, let's say I do week 12 and I redo another week and I point back to this thing, it's already going to know who admin is. It's going to know who Tom is. It's going to know who Jane is. I just made are because I've already registered them and they're already here in the database. If I want to look at the users, right? So here's my user login, and here's my ASP.NET user. If I want to look at them, I can do the same thing as normal. I can kind of view data, and it's going to show me some users. Here's admin at example.com. Here's Jane and Tom, right? Those people are in there. Find the user like normal from here, from inside the database. Now, if I want to create, here's something I want to ask you. If I want to create, now that I have a connection to my database, right? If I want to create user management, I can do that by using the Entity Framework. Is it'd be the ability for me to create users and delete users. Here's one thing I can't do: password resets. Notice that my password is a hash, and so is my ID. This is what it's done. So I don't know even what my ID is. My ID are actually hashed IDs. 2, 3, 4, 5. It's not an auto-incrementing table here. It's using hashed ID and password and security status, security stamp, so that there's no way I could duplicate this user by hand. It's impossible. I would need to know the hash and the salt and everything else, all the security stuff that I need to know that I want here. Also notice that it says other things too. My phone number or not, yes or no, right? My two-factor authentication, am I enabled? If it is, it'll always check to see if it'll ask me for my number. Like tons of stuff here. It's all built into Microsoft. Few clicks. And of course, something that sometimes requires a paid account on Azure or a SQL Server, SQL database, you have total control. Be careful. It's not, I mean, it's easy. If you look up how to do it, there's step-by-step instructions on how to do two-factor authentication. But allow it. Highly recommend against it for this project because we have no time. Not because it takes a lot. It can cause a bit of hiccups, just like I just saw here. Just by changing one thing, I changed my login in 5 places, and you have to know where to look, right? So if you have time and you're ambitious, certainly you can kick off two-factor authentication, so you have to have an authenticator and so on. I don't recommend it. Same thing with lockout, enabling lockout, or even verification. Email verification, you have to set up an email system that goes back and forth using something like SendGrid, you know, where you can communicate with your, right? So any questions around the setup of login and register pages? Go back to the PowerPoint for a second, and let's take a look. So we've done this piece, which is really around looking at the my configure app start folder inside my start off file. And it also talks about these things in here. And each of these three classes, there's three classes related to logging in. So one of them is this text create, application, user manager, and we're going to, you know, kind of create this user manager, kind of similar to what we did in the first half of the course. We did all this stuff. We did it by hand, right? I'm not going to talk about these classes because this is just information about what these classes do. I don't really need you to know. There's three classes that log you in. Okay. Also, the same thing here. I'm not going to talk about if you're persistent or not. This is part of the classes. It talks about all of that in here in these little tables. When you're sign-in status, there's a bunch of different status for sign-in. Did I have success? Am I locked out or not? If I tried 5 times or 10 times, whatever your lockout value is. Do I require verification? You know, as an example, but I haven't been verified. So I haven't set up an email verification to register myself to make sure that I am who I say I am, right? And I didn't log in properly, right? Kind of thing. Okay. One thing to know is that it sends this authentication cookie, and you asked, hey, what is that? You know, thing that tells me that I'm going to validate or take away that anti-forgery token. Well, that's what it does, right? It kind of checks to see if my cookie is correct. And again, this just tells me how the configuration is set up. I'm not going to modify that. I'm recommending that you leave it alone. Okay, it tells me the process of how to do that. And it also talks about how you can use the identity frame Facebook. If you wanted to do this, it's not that difficult to do OAuth, to use OAuth to kind of provider. However, you have to set yourself up as a developer for Google, for Facebook, and Twitter in order for you to generate an app ID, everything else. And there's a bit of setup to set up OAuth. It's convenient for the users to do, but it's a course. If you're going to take another course with me, and if we're going to do more complex course or an advanced course with let's say, for example, in that COMP229 emerging technologies, we may have a chance to do it there with Node. And it's kind of the same thing. When you use OAuth, you can connect, you can kind of look it up, how to do it. Again, there's some really good examples online on how to do that, and I'll leave that to you. And this is where it talks about more how to log in with authentication. Notice that as a client ID and a client secret, these two things create something called trust relationship. Authentication or third-party authentication works as this. So here's my user, right? What it does, the user goes to the web app, and the web application redirects the user to the place to log in. The user logs into my external service, like comes back with did I log in properly or not to my user? Yes, I did. And then what it does is it forwards the token to the web application. This token says, if the external provider says, yeah, he can log in, I know who he is, he's on Facebook or Google or GitHub, whatever, then it's going to return a response that says, hey, you're logged in. So I don't keep track of the authentication locally on the server, right? It's handled by the Facebook or Google or Microsoft. And this has been a good system lately because Microsoft and Google and Facebook have way better security, right? And it's much more convenient because users don't want to keep setting up new username and passwords, 10 different sites. And that means if I hack your password, Javid, then I probably can get into everything. Your mail, your bank accounts, your whatever, right? I'm just saying, but those are the kind of things we can do, right? So that's bad. Whereas in Facebook, right, at least if I can log into Facebook, then it authenticates you. Now you want to try and find a provider that you trust, because what happens is it creates this trust and your server. That's what it does. Okay, so enough about third-party. We're going to talk too much about that. Let's talk about this security. So I want to log in. I have access now. I've logged in, and what I want to do is a couple ways of kind of securing my pages. All right. So I'm just going to skip down to the section where it does. It's okay. Properties. So there's different ways I can do it. So one thing is to know what these things are. Email. The email address, lockout enable. These are all the things inside of my table. If I look at my identity user properties, right? And it also goes into detail about and I kind of talked about this online, what each of these things do. These are all the fields that are part of my table to log in, log out, and all that kind of stuff. Okay? That's what these things are. I'm just showing you what they are. I'm not going to talk about them too much because, again, if you look at the table, properties that are built into my ASP.NET users table, right? That's what this is all. That's all this stuff is. Okay. Again, we talked about two-factor authentication. We're not going to do that, but it's a great security system that we use. We just want very simple ways of securing our website. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to kind of go into an email confirmation, another very popular way of doing things. It's one of the most popular ways, identity and security these days, by sending out an email confirmation saying, verify who you are. Just tell me that email address actually exists. The mobile phone two-factor authentication is kind of a newer one, where they kind of send a text message to your mobile phone and say, text you with a code, right? Okay, so we talked about all this stuff, and I want to kind of, in order for you to do stuff, you want to secure a site. Well, it's damn easy. All we have to do is we have to authorize in that controller requires authentication. That's it. That's security. That's how fast it is for MVC. So let me talk about this. All right. So if I go back to this, I talked a lot about authentication, but there's really nothing to do. That's why I told you at the beginning when we kind of talked about authentication way earlier. So let's say, well, I'm gonna put this out there to you guys, right? I have this manage controller, right? And my manage controller requires me to manage users, right? Notice that my manage controller already exists. At the top of my controller, it has the authorized keyword. That means in order for me to manage my user information, and this is each of the users can manage themselves, have to be logged. Authorized means logged in for him to be able to manage himself. You can't just manage a user if you're not logged in, right? Well, if using this pattern, I can decide what the user sees. Example, if I want to lock down certain parts of my web, guys and girls, this is like the #1 thing you want to learn, so take a look. Let's say in my store manage controller. Here's my store manage controller. We don't have these links yet, but I want to say this. If I can manage my albums and all this kind of stuff, I'm going to say my store manage controller, you have to be authorized to use any kind of links that's in here. I don't want to do it up here. I want to do it just above the controller name. And I can add something called, right, tokens, right? Once I do that, it's basically saying this. If I want to see my in the controller, like for example, a list of albums, that's it. Yeah. No, they're already hidden. They're already inside these folders, right? Nothing to hide. Just put the authorized keyword on the top, and anything that's inside the controller. Same. So let's say, for example, let's one at a time. I'll show you everything. You guys are asking me the right questions. What if I just want to authorize one thing? For now, I want to authorize everything. Everything has to be authorized. First of all, I don't have a link, right? In order for me to get my link to my store manager itself, right? There's a couple things I could do. Okay, need to be like, for example, manage the store. Do I really want to display that here? Right? I don't. I want to log in, and when I log in, depending on who I am, right? Then I want to display another link here, another navigation store. Otherwise, if I show one of the things is for thieves and people who want to break in your security, if they see a link, they'll try it out. If they don't see a link, they don't know it exists, they can't get there, right? So first things first. If you don't want people to know it here, right? Like I have a home link, but if I want to manage my stuff, right? Well, it's not running right now. And I want to go to the store manager. Let's try this out. So let's kind of kill this. And then now this should take me to my home link, right? My main page. And it's going to show me ways of doing all this stuff. But for me, if I want to, if I go to store manager, like store manager by itself, and I press enter, it's going to ask me if I'm logged in. So what it should do is, if it knows what this is, what I'm asking for, it should ask me to log in. Because I've put the authorized keyword in there, right? I don't have a store manager link though up here, right? So the way to do that is when I log in, depending on who I am, it'll display the store manager link, right? How do I get that information? So remember where I did that? I did it in a login partial. So here's my login partial. I'm going to give you some hints about how to do this stuff, right? I don't ask you to do this. It's not required for your final project. Now, notice what it says. It says, depending on the user identity, get the username, right? If my request is authenticated, I'm logged in. If my request is authenticated, then I want to add a link to the navbar user, right? And this is nice. And what I can do is I can also check to see if, right? I can check if my user identity, that get username, is equal to admin, then show some else. So how do I do that? Oh, inside the same place, right? Which is, I don't want to show log off, right? But before log off, before where it says log in or hello so-and-so, right? I'm going to show my log off form. So here's my begin form, right? But what I want to do is I want to show the thing that says, hey, check to see if this user is so-and-so. So inside here somewhere. And I want to put it inside this UL. Just razor. So depending on where I want to put this, if I want to put this before my hello user or after it, let's put it right here. So I say at, and then if I go if, and if I start looking at user, dot get username, right? Right, remember, what's my username? Admin at example.com. Has to be the whole thing. Admin at example.com. Then, what do I want to do? I want to put a list item, another list item in here. Sorry, it doesn't accept that in here. Another list item. Inside my list item, I want to put some kind of link text that shows me my manage controller, or my store manager, right? Because that's what this thing is. If you look up here, inside my controllers, I have my manager controller, right? So let's put that in. So we're going to say at HTML Okay? And inside there, we're going to put in the name of the action link button, which is store or that's the actual link text, right? And then the name of your action, right, which is my index action. And then the name of your controller, which is the store manager. And if I did it right, and check to see if I'm a menu user. Otherwise, I won't do this. It just admits it, right? And I'm going to add this action link after the. Make sense? Well, then I would put another one. Where I'm just choosing a very simple to make the admin role. I didn't do that yet. If my user role is equal to admin, which I don't have a user role like that yet. One thing at a time. One thing, step by step. And see if it works. So I'm going to go back to this, and I'm going to refresh the page. Now it's not going to show me. It's going to show me. I'm going to log in as me. So Tom at example.com first, right? So 1, 2, 4, 1, 2. Again, it's going to take me back to my page. It should not show it up here now. If I log in properly up here, it should say, here's Tom at example.com. What happened? It actually took me there, right? Redirected me to this, which is not what I want. It went to Store Manager. It allowed me in, right? Because it said anyone who's registered can go there. I went to the Store Manager, but let's go back. I'll fix that in a second. So if I go back to this, and if I go back to login, and if I go to Tom at example.com, there's two issues I'm talking about here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, I don't see a link here. Log off. Let's go and log in as admin, example.com. Totally different person, right? And I go back down here and go 1, 2, 3, 4, and click log in. Right? Click Store Manager. Now it'll take me to that link. Now the problem is if I know that it exists, because who is there, as long as I'm authorized. That's a different thing altogether, right? So how do I do that? So I'm going to say only admin. Let's go back to my store controller, the store manager controller. So here it just says authorized, but can I? So well, first of all, I have to stop debugging. Can I do something like I want to authorize, but can I do something like where users, right, to admin at example.com. And do that. And the answer is you can, right? So you can specify only the admin can go do this, right? Now that's on the controller side. So now not only can I stop the playing that, but I can also stop users, even if they know there's a store manager, from getting there. Let's try this out now. So I'm going to go to here, and let's go back to my login partition and go. Makes sense? So one, I changed my login partial to give me the extra stuff when I'm logged in, right? That's number one. And the second thing is, when I get in here, what I want to do is I want to down my manager. Example, I'm admin. I can go to my store manager, right? Because I'm admin. Yay! I log off, and I log. Remember, I actually remembered me, right? So I log off. Now I'm log in as Tom at example.com. I should not see my manager. Right? It shouldn't show it. It doesn't show it. But what if I put it in my manually like this, like I did last time? So store manager. Somehow I remembered I can get in. I saw someone else do it. Doesn't let me in. Puts me back out to the login because I'm just an admin. So now I've shown you two things. One, how I can lock down so anybody can get at it. And the other one is only if one person can get at it, like admin at example.com. Right? Make sense? Now I'm going to go back to the question. I want to lock down only one thing. Only one of those, only one of the things that's in there. For example, here's something that I want to do. What I want to do is do one of these, okay? So I want to go back to this, stop this. Because, well, what about if I only want to lock down one, but not the others? Well, if I go to my store manager, if I put this, right? So I'm going to kill this. Anybody to delete stuff. If I want to try and delete one of these, if I can edit, when it comes down to, actually, I'll stop anyone from editing. So here's my get. I don't want to show my edit, right? Or I want to change anything. Look what I'm doing here. Right before for the method, I put it right there. And I don't want to do it on delete, because I want to stop these things list it, but they can't delete or even show the delete method whatsoever. You won't show those at all. I can do that too, but I can allow them to list. So I can allow people to see the list, but not delete or edit anything. That I can do by changing right above the method name. Let's try this out. So I'll run it. Now I'm going to log in as Tom again, my store manager. I should be able to see my list, right? As long as I'm logged in. But I won't be able to edit or delete. I won't even be able to go there. It'll stop me. It'll redirect me back to my login, right? So example, I'm logged in as Tom. Remember, it stopped me before. I can go back in here to say store manager, press enter. It'll list it now because I'll allow that. But if I click delete button when it allows me to, it's going to redirect me back out to here. It won't allow me to delete or edit. I can list it, but not do anything else. So again, you can set it up so that you can make a list of users or roles if you want to go there. Okay, where role is equal to admin. Okay, one more thing. What if, which is the better way to do it, to lock everything down except for one. That's another way to do it, right? This way, I kind of lock specific ones down. But what if I want to lock everything? It's easier, right? I want to lock everything except for one or two. That's another way of doing it. So let's get rid of these. Cut these out. Oops. So I'm going to cut this one out. And this one, I'm going to kind of call these out, right? All the ones I added in. So cut this one out. But I want to put this back up here like this again, like I did before. So here I want to lock everybody except for I want to allow, right, anonymous users to get the list, this index. I want to do that, but nothing else. How do I do that? I go into here, and I go another one of these, and I go allow anonymous. For this one, index, my list, I allow anonymous. And maybe for the details, like for your menu, I also can allow anonymous. But the rest locked. And that's actually the better way, right? So lock everything down and only allow anonymous in the places where you want to. That filter, right? What that does is it does exactly what I want. So I lock it here at the controller level, and only the place where I want overrides. My allow anonymous overrides the lock. Let's try this out. Hold on. So again, if I go back and run it, and this is all you need for security. That's it. Security's done. That's why it's a beautiful thing. If you want to put webconfig in, if you want to do the same things you did in webconfig, you can do it. All the same things that work with. If you want to do the same thing webconfig we did for the first thing, you can. You can lock down a whole section, whole folder of stuff, but the folder is being controlled, right? So it's more efficient this way. An example of this would be this, right? So I want to log off, right? And if I go to now, if I want to go to manage, I'm not even logged in here. If I go to store manager, I can do this now. I can actually list the store, right? But I won't have to log in anymore. I'm anonymous. I'm not even logged in here. So I can do a list of store stuff, but I can't do any of this. If I do edit, if I do, it'll allow me to go in. Even details. If I want to see the details, I said allow anonymous is okay, right? In a second, no problem. It's gonna put me out here, right? So really quite simple security system and rock solid from Microsoft. Yeah. Yes, comma separated.
But what if it checks basically? You're not going to list a whole bunch, right?
Right, but the better way to do it, of course, is to use roles. Before we stop recording, right? So yeah, so let's say, for example, my users equal to this. I want to say something else. What if I wanted to use an authorize, right, where roles is equal to admin? That's a role. That's different than users. Now, I haven't talked about roles yet. And how do I set up a user role anyway? There's no simple way to do it, is the answer. You have to set up a form to kind of set up the user role when you register the user, right? And you have to have user management, right, which we have not required. A quick and dirty way of doing it. Just saying. It's on this side, right? Here's the thing. Notice on over here, ISP.NET roles. First, we need to create a role. So I'm going to go view data. Right? I want to create a role called admin. Here's my role. Now look what it says here. It says data was not committed, error source, cannot insert the value null into the column ID, right? Because some ID, like give an ID, right? So let's give it an ID. Let's give it an ID of 1. Now, it's supposed to be hashed, but who cares? So now I've got an admin role. Works. Students can do it, right? Okay, but now I got to go to my user manager, my actual users. So I go to here, and I want to, view data on my users. And notice that it says, is there a role somewhere in here for my user? No, but look, there's ASP.NET roles. This one, this defines the role, and this is user roles, right? User roles. This is the craziness you have to do. Here's my role ID, and here's my user ID. So what you have to do is to go into the ASP.NET users, this one. And let's say, for example, admin, which is this ID right here. This is the pass. This is the actual hash. I'm going to copy this ID, Control C. ASP.NET user roles. Here's the user ID. Here's the role ID, right? Now, here's the problem. It says the data in row 1 was not committed, error source. The insert statement conflicted with the foreign key constraint, right? It says the conflict occurred in the database table, column 1, the statement has been errors and retry. So what is the requirement of my role ID? Some kind of hash. That's what it is, for sure. Because this user ID, I'm going to move over here to this ASP.NET users. Yes. Well, here, you mean? Hold on a second. So you mean take D is what you want to copy? Oh, this. The data in the cell has changed. It changed now, but the original value was null. Press, hold on. So what are you saying here for user ID? If the user ID matches, which it does, ASP.NET users right here. Well, it's right here. Right? See if I didn't capture the whole thing. It's this. So I didn't capture the whole copy. Hold on a second. Go back here. Paste. We'll put 1. That's the role ID and tab. Yay. So now what happens is the admin is in. The admin is in, baby. All right. So let's do this. So this is roles. Now I did it all in the database because there's no forms that I have built into my application to do this. I could create a form, right, with that role. I could do that, right, because I can include things like ASP.NET users and all this kind of stuff, and I can create user management just like we use Entity Framework. Okay? But that's what you have to do to create these extra forms to do role management. Okay. For now, though, it's done. Let's check it and see if it works. Now I've changed the database I've added admin, so it has to be admin lowercase, right? I've added a faux ID. So now instead of doing users, all these users, I can assign a bunch of users that same role, and only those users. So instead of roles or users, it's going to be only users with a role of admin. Let's try this out. So, and if we have to run this application again, so we'll run it, and we'll test it. And I'm showing you how to do this because this is the, I don't know, quick and dirty way of doing it, if you will, right? Now that my database is set up, there's always an admin role, and I can admit, okay? Okay, cool. So let's log in, right? I'm going to log in as Tom.com, and I can be able to list things, 3, 4, right? Log in. I can list. And if I want to, I can actually even go to, here, right? Store Manager. And if I go to Store Manager, it's going to list things. But if I go to Edit or Delete, it's going to stop me. It's going to pull me out here. But if I register as admin, right, at example.com, second password, and it's going to say there's Store Manager, and allows me to edit right away. No problem, because it accepts admin as a problem. What we did with our partial is I used user is equal to admin at example.com. How do I do the same thing with role? Remember? And then we'll fix this up so it's everything is roles based, not users based. Right? So roles and users based, right? Well, if I go back to my, say very, very simple actually. If I go back here, and you probably thought about it already. If I go to my login partial, notice that I asked for if my user identity get username is equal to this. Well, it's the same thing as doing if my user identity role, is that possible? User dot is in role is equal to admin. It's actually not that. It's not that way. Is in role is actually a the method. So you pass in, I believe, admin. Right? That's I think is what it's like. Yeah. If that's true, that do whatever. That's the way it works, right? If user is in role admin, then show store manager. If not, don't. So let's try this out. And we'll run it again. I know these are little changes, but this is the stuff you do when you do admin or role-based compared to user-based, right? I'm showing you the whole gamut of changes. The only thing I haven't done is claim-based. All right, so notice it says role manager, log off, in again, right? So there's admin at example.com, and I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and click login, and then bam, it shows me the store manager again because admin is part of the admin role. Make sense? That's it. That's authentication. Very, very simple. Any questions? That's all. How about this? This is all I need you to know, and more than I need you to know. For your final, for your fantasy restaurant, you put this in. Now, well, how would I lock down? What would I lock down with my fantasy? I have to include some way of something to lock down. You can't just include security and there's nothing to lock down, right? You got to lock down, like, I want to be able to manage my items, right? That's how you lock those things down. So you can't manage your items. You can only show details. And you can use the same trick in your item. You can create your own partial. So inside of your items, you only show delete and edit if the user is an admin. Otherwise, you use an if statement for that. You can say if is authenticated, then, oh man, are you gonna make me do this now? All right. Let's do it. One more thing before you guys go. And I know I got a long recording here, but let me try this out. So let's say, for example, I want to show my index that's HTML index. That's the wrong one. Let me just kind of get all this stuff up, right? Oh, I meant inside my store manager, right? I also want to hide my other links. So here's my store manager. I have my index.cshtml. And remember here, what I do is I have artist, my name, and my price, and then at the end, I edit. However, I only want to show delete and edit. Remember, I told you, don't give authentication to people who don't have access. They know it's right. So don't even try this stuff if the person's not authorized. So how do I do that? First of all, in order for him to be here, he has to be authentic. If he's part of the user, then show those things. And you want to kind of combine these together. So an example would be this. Move these things around. First step. So cut this and put it here. So edit and delete are combined, right? Then, if the user is authenticated at, I want to do something like this, at if user dot is authenticate, or authentication, what is it again? I'll go back to example script, which is down in here. And by the way, it's like the details here. But the great thing is, that's all it takes. That's like really simple. And that's why when it comes to plugin partial. So if you notice, it says if my request is authenticated, let's try this out. So if my request, right? So if that's true, we want to bind this whole area here. So only then, if I'm authenticated, I want to show it anyway. Not only if I'm authenticated, but if my username, I have to be authenticated, and further binding is at if, and again, user dot is enroll admin. Then and only then do I want to show. Let's see if that's true. It works out, right? Because I want to be able to show you that it can totally work beautiful this way, right? So that's what I'm trying to say here. So, okay, question for you. How come it's showing an error here? No. It's showing an error here. Well, if I take the bar away, you think that's the problem, right? All it's going to show is the two buttons together. That's all it's going to do. The bar was a separator, right? And then I can't use this bar here because this bar is only available if it's not separated. So I can have to put this bar like in here somewhere, right? Oops. If authenticated, I mean that would only be appearing if the user is authenticated, right? But the problem is this bar is considered an HTML tag, and it's not understanding what I'm trying to do here. Yes, but once I put this in here, it's trying to figure what it is in my if statement, right? So let's just take this bar, the bars out. Remember, we probably customize our buttons anyway and make these buttons instead of links. What I'm doing is I'm separating these links, okay? So let's try this out. So only if he's authenticated and if the user is part of the admin role. And I'm still running. And so if you notice, I'm going to log off. Anonymous user, which is the store manager, and go here, and I should only see my details. Parse error. It says an error occurred in the parsing resource. Unexpected at character. Okay, because I'm probably because I'm using if inside the if, right? What was that? See how has the thing? I don't probably need the outside. Let's see if that's true. Probably not, because I'm inside of a razor state. Razor. This is okay, but a double if don't need that in this particular context. Let's see if that's true. So here and go refresh, and it should take us up to the store manager and not show us the links. Look, only details, right? But if I log in. Right, I log in as admin and go here and 1, 2, 3, 4, log in, and I click Store Manager. Now I see everything. But this is what I get because of the spaces. I get details, no space, and then delete. How do I fix they're right together like that. And I need some kind of separator. I can't use this because it sees this now as a pipe, right? So it's confusing this thing. I could put the string, so you're talking about it in here. I could put a space in here, right? That's what you're thinking? Let's see what happens. I don't think so. But let's see. So here, from this, because it's two different statements here. But here I need a space between the two. That's what you're saying. Let's see if that's true. Fresh. Right? And then you have this link. That's a quick and dirty thing to do. But I would probably make these into buttons because I like them as buttons more. And I would use the opposed to the action link, which would give me the nice buttons here with my font awesome and everything else. When not available, I click delete, and I can delete something if I really want to. Poof. Okay, now that covered everything. That covered how to actually modify different parts of the page depending on who's logged in, which is totally like dumb easy. Like that was like, I didn't even take me anything to do. Guys, that's it for this week. I wanted to kind of cover shopping cart as well. We're going to start and finish that next week. So it's all around shopping cart next week. It looks like just for the amount of work we have to do. So I remember next week also we'll do I want to do a brief discussion about the exam. So okay. Thank you so much, and see you next week. And I'll put this up to GitHub in a second. Hold on.